live now. Okay, I'll be good.
But the radio can't hear you though, so 30 seconds.
Hey y'all, this is Mark G. Abolitionist on the air with you at KEXU 96.1 FM LP, Revolution Radio, where we explore the connection between imperial war and incarceration. I don't limit myself to being a prison abolitionist because there are more structures and institutions that I seek to abolish than just incarceration. For example, white supremacy and racism, two different things. Male supremacy and patriarchy, two different things. Class supremacy and wage oppression, two different things. And imperial war. Yes, imperial war is an institution of the American empire. Let me be perfectly clear. The United States military is an institution of the American empire, as we all know. However, it serves the institution of imperial war. The need for imperial conquest shapes and defines the United States military. In fact, the European settler lust and need for indigenous lands made the development of a military necessary. All who opposed or resisted were killed or imprisoned. The first reservations were in fact prisons. I'm going to talk about Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and every and any inner city in America. In October 1966, I was 19 and in Vietnam. He was a 9 or 10-year-old boy begging for food on the side of the road like hundreds of others. I was riding shotgun in a truck. I was the one with the gun. The driver crushed his skull with a can of sea rations. In the 80s on up into the 90s, he's a 9 or 10-year-old boy standing lookout on the corner. And when the shooting car comes around the corner to take out the store, he gets splattered on the floor. In the 90s on up into the 2000s, he's a 9 or 10-year-old boy swinging a rock-loaded slingshot around his head. And when he looses his rock missile to fly and shatter against the armor of an American-made tank that belches forth a round that blows him beyond the thin blue line that surrounds and divides and separates our communities. It's a little spoken word piece I do, tying together experiences in Vietnam, experiences in the inner cities of America, and experiences in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip, in the occupied territories, in the West Bank. These are conditions that exist. These are conditions that happen. These are things that happen to the lives of children in these types of situations and circumstances. All of these things involve imperial war. I'm going to hold a little bit this week and not get directly into imperial war because I want to talk a little bit more about wage oppression and how it functions. We have some things happening currently that I think are pertinent to this discussion. We've all heard former President Trump claim that the election was stolen, that President Biden was elected fraudulently, and that he, Donald Trump, is the true President of the United States. Clearly, he is fabricating lies. There is incredible amounts of evidence that point to his lying. But nonetheless, there are many people who believe him. But it's not everyday Americans that I want to point to in this little discussion right now. It's people, other politicians in other states and other parts of the country who are refusing to accept results of elections that they lose. They say, no, I didn't lose, just as Trump did, creating lots of confusion, confusing voters, confusing political structures, making it difficult for government to function. In addition, and this is where I want to go in our discussion around wage oppression, there's two corporations, Starbucks and Amazon, both currently facing strong union organizing efforts on the part of the working people who work for these corporations. What's happening is that both Starbucks and Amazon are refusing to accept the results of elections of the workers at Starbucks and the workers at Amazon when they vote for a union. The corporations are just ignoring it and saying there were irregularities, there was fraud, it was fraudulent, similar to the types of claims that ex-President Trump made and that subsequent Republican politicians are making in their own races. This has a direct impact on the lives of working people, of these people involved in struggles. The Fair Labor Relations Board has put forth positions and made statements and demands of Starbucks and Amazon, and they were refusing to follow those instructions. Things that are mandated, things that are legal, things that have the weight of law behind them. And the corporations are refusing to abide by these regulations. So they're refusing to accept the results of elections, claiming irregularities and fraud, and they're refusing to follow directives and mandates from the Labor Relations Board. It's a stalling tactic on their part. They're pushing things back, delaying meeting, delaying negotiating, pushing things down the line. There are statistics that say that Amazon's workforce changes every 9 to 11 months. So if they do a waiting game, people leave the job and there's a whole new group of people, and it's much more difficult to get a union going. Right? Even though workers in both corporations have voted for unions, the corporations are now taking the tactic of disputing those elections. This is a process that Trump, former President Trump, let me be respectful, that former President Donald Trump put into motion. and they're being picked up by other politicians and by corporations and being used against working people and the population in general. These are very important developments and things we need to pay close attention to. We must support the workers organizing for unions. We must support their union efforts, and we must support their unions once they are formed. If you write to Congress people, please do that and voice your agreement with what you hear here. Voice your support for the workers at Starbucks and Amazon. These aren't the only places that this type of thing is going on. In addition, both of these corporations are involved in wage theft, stealing of people's wages. This comes down in a few different ways. One way is to mandate people come in a half an hour before their shift begins so that they can be on time and that they can prepare. In other words, set up. So that's a half an hour of work that the corporation gets that's unpaid. They also steal people's wages by giving them a 1 hour lunch or a 1 hour break on the clock, but in reality, people are only allowed a half an hour break, which means that another half an hour that people work is not paid for. They never see the money. The corporation gets that labor for free. These are some of the tactics that corporations are employing. They also work people longer than 8 hours and don't pay overtime, another form of wage theft. These are all things that keep people oppressed, keep people from having sufficient amount of money to take care of their basic needs. You know, another corporation that we all know of very well, you know, Kmart and Walmart, both participate in low wages and wage theft of the ways that I've described, such that many of their employees have to be on some form of government assistance in order to make the ends meet in their lives. Food stamps, some form of welfare, yet they work full time. The corporations are stealing from all of us in that regard, because when workers have to rely on food stamps, general assistance, or other forms of the welfare system in order to function in their lives, that money comes from tax money, from the money that working people pay into taxes, and it benefits the corporation because they're not paying their employees proper wages. All of these things work together to create an oppressive situation for working people, such that people feel stress, people feel drained, and are unable to function in a fully developed way because they're struggling and bumping around trying to figure out how to come up with the extra dollars that they need. If they get a flat tire, if they get a ticket, right? If the car breaks down in some other way, if one of the children gets sick and the parent needs to take off time from work, right? These are all little things that seem little, but can be absolutely mountainous and sometimes insurmountable for people. You know, an extra $50 a week, you know, when you're spending all your money on the basic things that you actually need, an extra $50 can throw you over the edge, can knock you into a downward spiral that one is unable to pull themselves out of. And these things happen because of wage oppression. They're designed, pay structures, pay scales, and the ways that corporations function are designed to keep people oppressed and to keep people running from dollar to dollar, from moment to moment, trying to support themselves and their families. This is Mark G., Abolitionist, on the air with you. We're going to close out tonight. I want to thank you all very much for being with me. I know that I met a person at a conference last week who said that she actually listened to my radio show, so I know that there's at least one person there, and I'm heartfelt about that. You know, and we will keep this going. So please join with me, the Prisoners of Conscience Committee, All of Us or None, Formerly Incarcerated, Convicted, and Family People Movement, and we say, what's the call? Free them all. Dare to struggle. Dare to win. All power to the people. We are the ones we're waiting for. Say Ashe. Well, you know, I can't say, okay, now what was I saying?
That happens every now and then.
Yeah, well, it seems to be happening more now.